morning. I'm Fran Gibson. I'm president of the Rossmoor Emergency Preparedness Organization, and I would like to welcome everybody to our jointly sponsored Rossmoor EPO and Rossmoor Area CERT meeting. This is our regular August meeting, and we hope this will be an annual event where we invite Golden Rain Foundation and the Rossmoor Public Safety Manager to come and to present emergency preparedness from the perspective of Golden Rain Foundation. I want to welcome everybody. This meeting will be recorded. It will be on our website, which is www.rossmoorepo.org. It'll also be on our YouTube channel. And George Ivanoff with Channel 28 is also recording it, and he will schedule it for the community at large. So I want to welcome everybody. Besides our three speakers, our leadership circle from Golden Rain Foundation, we also have here today, as I said, Marcia McLean, who is Rossmoor Area CERT Coordinator. We also have Colleen Trinerud, who is EPO past president, and she is the Red Cross Blood Program lead, and she'll give us a report on our co-sponsored blood drives. We have Christine Monson, who's our intrepid EPO questions and comments moderator, and Harris Greenberg, who is our EPO high-tech coordinator, and those are EP and CERT folks. We also have with us Tim O'Keefe, CEO for Golden Rain Foundation, Tom Cashion, who's Rossmoor Public Safety Manager, and Rebecca Pollon, who is the manager of Rossmoor Landscape. We want to welcome Tim. Tim has been our Chief Executive Officer for Rossmoor since 2015. He oversees the protection and the operations of 19 separate entities within the Golden Rain Foundation. He brings to his work a storied history of service to Catholic Charities, Shelter Incorporated, and served as CFO of America's largest manager of homeowners associations and planned unit developments. He's well prepared to lead GRF through the complex problems we will be facing ahead, requiring well-grounded, data-driven solutions. Tim and Golden Rain Foundation were recently honored by California Emergency Services Association with an award for exceptional emergency management and preparedness during our COVID crisis, and their innovative wildland fire management operations here, protecting residents in Tice Valley. In my many years of public and community health education, I have never seen a better or more effective primary prevention community campaign to reduce deaths and disabilities from a major public health threat than that of Tim and his team. So I want to welcome Tim. Tom Cashion is he's our new, but not so new now. He is our new Rossmoor Public Safety Manager. And Tom has hit the ground running with 3 community wildfire meetings and a 4th that's scheduled for September 1st. September 1st is National Emergency Preparedness Month. So it's that's a good date to have a wildfire safety meeting for our community. Tom brings 24 years of law enforcement experience and community involvement with the Walnut Creek Police Department. He knows Rossmoor very well, having served as sector commander for us in downtown Walnut Creek. He has vast experience in patrolling, crime investigation, community emergency notification and supervision, and I love his hashtag, a safer Rossmoor. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice. He's proactive, innovative, and interested in working closely with EPO to unify and to simplify our disaster preparedness messaging to this community, and to scale up our joint efforts at utilizing the best practices to ensure a safer Rossmoor. That is, of course, music to my public health education ears. Tom attends EPO and CERT meetings monthly, and he provides us guidance and support for the work of our many intrepid resident volunteers and leadership. Rebecca Pollon is with us this morning also, our Rossmoor Landscape Manager. She's been working for 20 years in landscape management and holds a master's degree from the University of Melbourne. She first came to Rossmoor with the Valley Crest firm 10 years ago and went on to become our landscape manager. Born and raised in Malibu, she works tirelessly toward a strategic, stepwise 5-year community landscaping plan called the Rossmoor Landscape 2025 and beyond. I recommend that for residents to read. That quote, builds on the beauty of Rossmoor, helps to enrich residents' lives, and supports the natural processes that in turn support our community, preserving and enhancing Tice Valley for generations to come. She is indeed our staunchest steward in fostering the well-being of our great natural resources here in Rossmoor. I want to welcome Tim, Tom, and Rebecca. So Tim, let's turn this show over to you for your public safety and emergency preparedness message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fran. So I want to just thank everybody for both your interest and your support of emergency preparedness here in Rossmoor. Emergency preparedness is critical, as we all know, and I think few communities do it better than Rossmoor with our collaborations with the Contra Costa Fire Protection District, Walnut Creek PD, the city, the county, CERT, Red Cross, and EPO. Golden Rain and the mutuals have regular visits and communication with Contra Costa Fire Protection District, which is also called ConFire, and we comply with all requirements. Together in 2021, we will have spent $200,000 between GRF and the mutuals for disking, weed abatement, vegetation removal, and mitigation. With the frequency and severity of fires, and wildfires in particular, in the last few years, Golden Rain has revised its emergency operations plan in 2019, and then the Golden Rain Board adopted in January of 2020 a new emergency operations plan that includes planning for wildfire and the creation of emergency management zones, which the civil authorities have agreed to adopt as evacuation zones. Civil authorities regularly plan for a disaster affecting Rossmoor. I know Tom's going to touch on that in just a moment. And we look forward to an upcoming live drill in Rossmoor with the civil authorities. In the last few months, we've resumed emergency planning with the civil authorities, which were suspended due to COVID. And we've recently hosted several information sessions with ConFire, Walnut Creek PD, the city, and Pacific Gas and Electric. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for every Rossmoor resident to do their part in being prepared. And number one is to create a go bag of essentials. And Rossmoor EPO has great materials, great information on the rossmoorepo.org website. I encourage everybody to visit that site and ensure that you and your friends and your neighbors have a go bag of essential items. Also, residents need to create their own evacuation plan. And really what you need to do is know where to go in the event that you are either frightened enough to want to leave or are ordered to go somewhere. So make sure you know you either have friends or family that you can visit outside of Rossmoor and know what that plan is in advance. Do not try to figure this out the day of a disaster. And finally, know your emergency management zone, or what are now the civil authorities are going to call the evacuation zones. Tom Cashion put together a great 8.5 by 14 card that was inserted into the Rossmoor News. It's available in our clubhouses. So if you have it or don't have it, make sure you pick one up, and it will identify for you where your emergency management zone or evacuation zone is. And so lastly, I just want to thank Fran, EPO, and all the EPO volunteers for the tremendous work that you do educating and keeping this out in front of the Rossmoor community. And I look forward to everybody's presentation here today.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. And particularly, I want to note per your instructions, good instructions and messaging to the community, you can find out your EMZ zone by going to if you don't have that wonderful tip sheet that Tom put together, we have a list by street, and it's on our website. So go to Resident Resources, and you will find under Emergency Management Zones, you'll find a list. Do know which your zone is, and do have your grab and go bag ready. Thank you, Tim. That's excellent.
Actually, Tom's insert with the graphics are also on our website.
Yes, they're both there. They're both there, by street and by tip sheet. Yes. Tom.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me today, and Tim and Rebecca. I think you got the fantastic trio of our organization today. You know, if Jeff was here, I'd say Jeff too, but he's not, so we'll go with that trio. But first off, let me start sharing my screen with everybody. All right. I take it everybody can see that? Yeah? Okay. All right, so first off, you know, a little bit of We try to prepare for everything in an emergency as far as emergency preparedness. You prepare for the worst, but you hope for the best. So a little bit of comedy there. I don't think we'll have dinosaurs, but hey, we should always think about everything, right? So just to recap, yeah, I am retired from the Walnut Creek Police Department. I served over 24 years there. So that's where I get a lot of my experience and training in this field. Also, I took over for Dennis Bell. So I've only been here, I started in February, but I took over the public of Rossmoor on April 1st. So just over 4 months it's been under my care. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about the emergency operations plan, which Tim talked about in the very beginning, which was adopted in 2020. So it's fairly new, fairly accurate. It's a very in-depth document, and I'll show you where you can see it or go look at it for yourself. It's very informative and really hits on a lot of great things for Rossmoor. So let's get started on that. So it was a collaboration. The update, there is an earlier emergency operation plan, but this one is really redid everything. And it was collaboration with many agencies. You can see them there, as well as EPO was part of it, CERT was part of it. There was many agencies, but those are the kind of the big ones that helped to get this across the finish line. And we actually hired, the GRF board approved and hired a outside consultant firm who we still work with. They're the ones who helped me create that card. It's a fantastic couple, and they continue to help me, guide me, and help me with all the services that they can. And they're also going to be doing drills for our staff in the fall on this topic here. So, okay, next one. What is Golden Rain's Foundation's responsibility? Well, the Golden Rain Foundation, GRF, has a limited role in disaster response. The GRF is not a first response agency, but we are here to assist in disaster response recovery needs within Rossmoor. In addition, the City of Walnut Creek is the governmental organization with overall authority for disaster response within the city. The GRF EOP is not intended to usurp, supplant the City of Walnut Creek's EOP or the city's authorities in a disaster. Rather, the GRF's EOP provides guidance to the GRF's response within Rossmoor. Moreover, the GRF EOP provides direction to the GRF on how to manage its resources in a manner that supports the city. And I apologize, there's a lot of acronyms when we start talking about emergency operations plans. That's just how they're kind of set up. And you can ask it in the question for me to clarify any that I do go over. I do say what they are first before I start using them, just so it helps you. So what was used to create the GRF emergency operation plan? Well, there were several things that went into it, or they went and looked at in order to create this. The Contra Costa County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and that was created in 2018. I'll go over what they did as far as the county. What were the risks for the county? They did a risk assessment for the whole county, and we'll cover that. The Contra Costa County Emergency Operations Plan, the City of Walnut Creek Emergency Management Plan, the City of Lafayette Emergency Operations Plan and their wildland fire evacuation, Golden Rain Foundation Emergency Operations Plan of 2013. So this is what replaced the 2013 EOP. So who is the Emergency Operation Plan for? The Golden Rain Foundation Emergency Operation Plan is specifically designed for personnel responsible for staffing positions within the Golden Rain Foundation, Rossmoor's Operations Center. So it's all our employees is really what this is directed for, and it's really our framework and our guidebook on how to respond to a disaster. However, it does talk about personal preparedness, just like what Tim said in the very beginning. It is recommended that all Golden Rain Foundation employees and Rossmoor residents be prepared for an emergency at home, work, and when traveling by having an emergency go bag at their home, workplace, and in their car that can sustain them for at least 72 and up to 96 hours or longer. The Rossmoor Resident Disaster Preparedness groups that we have here is obviously, everybody knows, Emergency Preparedness Organization, EPO, which includes entry coordinators, the Community Emergency Response Team, which is CERT, but that falls under the City of Walnut Creek, Citizen Band Radio, and Family Radio Service. So where can you find the Golden Rain Foundation Emergency Operation Plan? Well, there's two places you can find it. First, you can go to rossmoor.com, and that's the site that the Golden Rain Foundation runs. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see where the emergency operation plan is, and you click on that and it takes you to it. It's also right next to Nixle where you sign up for Nixle. Another place you can look for it is at the rossmoorepo.org site. However, I did look at that just recently, and it has the 2019 draft on that. So if you want the most current, it is actually on rossmoor.com, and we're working at updating the rossmoorepo.org site with the up-to-dated 2020 version. What is the purpose of the emergency operation plan? The purpose of the Golden Rain Foundation Emergency Operations Plan is to establish a system for coordinating an effective GRF response to natural or man-made disasters. The GRF Emergency Operation Plan also addresses coordination with governmental and non-governmental agencies when required. So this is that hazard ranking thing that I was telling you about that the county did back in 2018. Now, I do want to say, this is 2018 and now we're in 2021. And some things may have changed, like one in particular, I think that has kind of moved a little bit more to the high, and that's wildfire. So we'll see that as we move through here. The county has not updated the 2018 hazard rankings. I'm hoping they will, so that we can, look at more current information. But until they do, this is what we use to establish our emergency operation plan. So as you can see, it goes through a different rating scale, and it comes out, if you look down on the bottom, hopefully you guys can see this, but number 1 was earthquake. That was identified as being a high possibility or probability of occurring here in Rossmoor. Second was wildfire. Third was severe weather. 4 was landslide, and 5th was flood, which was low. What are the Golden Rain Foundation priorities in a disaster? Well, obviously it's protecting lives, protecting property, restoring essential Golden Rain Foundation services, preserving effective Golden Rain Foundation services, preserving mutual operation division services, providing public information to the residents, and protecting and restoring the environment. So on this slide, you get to see the chart, our organizational chart of the Rossmoor Operations Center, also called the ROC. So there's many layers when there's a disaster, and so this is all the forms that we kind of go through. As you see on the top, it's the operational area. So who would be responsible for that? More than likely would be the county. If you attended the last wildfire presentation, the Office of Emergency Services, they shared what they do, and that's who would coordinate our operational area. Granted, that could actually even be multi-county. If it's a multi-county disaster, it could fall under multi-county or even a statewide area as well. And then under that is, of course, locally, and that's City of Walnut Creek, and that's their Emergency Operations Center. And then you can see over to the right, that's where CERT is attached. And then as you move down, then we have the Rossmoor Operations Center. And if you go to the left, you'll see that the GRF Board of Directors is the policy group. Then Tim is the liaison legal officer. Then I am the director of the Rossmoor Operations Center. And then as we move down, you'll see that the public information officer, that would be Ann, who heads, Rossmoor News and Channel 28 and all that. She's our director of communications. And then if you move to the left box, which is red, it says operations section, and that's the director of mutual operations, and that would be Paul Donner. Planning and Intel section is the director of resident services, and that's Jeff Matheson. Logistics section, actually right now that is vacant, so that actually will probably fall under me until that is replaced. But right now we have Kim overseeing that. She oversees our bus drivers right now, and she's filling in for that until we get that position filled. And then for the financial administration section is our CFO, and that's Joel. And that's what makes up our Rossmoor Operations Center. So what does the Rossmoor Operations Center do? Well, the ROC serves as the centralized point to manage overall emergency response operations for the GRF. We don't handle the City of Walnut Creek. We don't handle CERT. We don't handle that. Only handled is the Golden Rain Foundation resources. What else happens there is communication, response planning, and financial support for an event, coordination with the City of Walnut Creek Emergency Operations Center and external organizations, GRF and Mutual Operations Division resource allocation, deployment within Rossmoor, and that's only within Rossmoor. We're not allowed to take any of our resources outside of the Rossmoor property. Communications with GRF personnel, CERT, and other local government agencies, and recovery activities to restore GRF and mutual facilities in a timely manner. So communication, notifications, alerts, and warnings. GRF capabilities of communications, what are those? Well, we have UHF radios, we have cellular, we have email, we also have access to CERT radio operators, as well as CBs. How does GRF notify our residents in case in a disaster, and how do we keep them informed? And we do that through Nixle, Channel 28, the Rossmoor News, our website, which would be part of the Rossmoor News, door-to-door canvassing, and other news channels via press releases. If we release a press release, the other channels will pick it up and then they'll broadcast what our press release is, as well as other agency communications. If you were at the last, or if you've been going to our wildfire presentations, you've probably learned a lot about the community warning system, which you can sign up for, and you can go to the EPO website and tells you how to do that. And then also the Walnut Creek Police Department. They have their own Nixle. It's separate from ours, and I encourage everybody to sign up for the Walnut Creek Police Department Nixle as well. Okay, so here we talked earlier about the emergency evacuation card, or Know Your Zone card. This is that side of that card. This came from the emergency operation plan. Towards the back, you'll see in the emergency operation plan a thing called the emergency management zones. That's how they were first identified. And then now they've been adopted by the City of Walnut Creek as evacuation zones. So that portion of the emergency operation plan does need to be updated. This card here is actually the most accurate and current information. As you can see, the nomenclature had changed on there. If you had seen in our EOP, it says it differently than on our card. And that's because the county has moved to a software program called Zone Haven for the entire county. And that's how they will evacuate every city within the county, is with the use of Zone Haven. And if you look at the nomenclature of WCR, and then it says dash, and then there is a number. WCR stands for Walnut Creek, and then 001 to 008 is for all of Rossmoor. Kind of interesting, we are the ones that have the first numbers in all of the city of Walnut Creek, so that's good news. We're the first to kind of pioneer this and get on the board with this and start this. So that's why we have those numbers. As well as on the card, as you can see, we also have those QR codes that you can scan and learn more information. What is next with evacuation zones? So may ask. Well, if you can see right on there, you see that WCR-005? That is a plate, a metal plate that will be installed on every entry. Well, I have to go to the President's Forum first and ask permission to install them. I don't think they're going to say no, but that's the next plan for these, is have your zone, your evacuation zone, installed on every entry. So you'll know the color of your zone and you'll know the number of the zone of where you live. Now that,
It's this lady, Marilyn.
I don't know who's talking in the background.
Excuse me, someone's talking in the background. You need to mute yourself. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, great. The benefit is, one, to our residents to know your zone. Helps you know your zone every time you pull in and pull out of your entry. But the other thing is actually helps first responders. If an officer is told to go evacuate WCR 005, the green zone, the officer can easily see on every entry where that is so that he or she can quickly evacuate those people from that zone. So it's a twofold thing that helps first responders as well as our residents. So I go in front of the President's Forum next month. GRF has found some money to pay for all these plates to be installed. And then we have some of our employees will be installing them. So good news. I'm hoping for good news. I'm sure we will, but you'll be seeing that shortly. Okay, let's talk about alternate access points and access roads. So in Rossmoor, there are 9 access roads. When I say access roads, Those are the terms that the fire department, both Con Fire and San Ramon Valley Fire Department, uses to describe these. They describe them as access roads, and really they're access roads for fire equipment to come into Rossmoor. So that's what they're not evacuation routes. They're not set up that way. However, I am going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But as you can see, as you move around, and thanks to one of the residents on EPO, she sent me this with the colors of both passable and impassable roads. And as you can see, the yellow are passable roads, and then the red are impassable for autos. They're either dirt or there's no way to get out on the other side. So that's the reason why they're called impassable. I want to talk about the passable because the next step I have for this is I'm working with the Walnut Creek Police Department to set up memorandums of understanding with the property owners of where those yellow roads go through, so that in an emergency they can be used as evacuation routes. So if you see up on the top where it says locked gate and you see a yellow one go into Lafayette, so that's Stanley Dollar Drive, and then it goes to Lucas Drive, which goes into Lafayette. That road is actually very easy to drive on and passable. It is asphalt the whole way, and it is a very viable option. So Walnut Creek PD with the homeowners and GRF are going to look at setting up an MOU to be able to use that in a disaster. If you go down to the lower, towards the middle right, you'll see some other yellow lines. Obviously the first yellow line with the little red one going off, that's our main gate, just to give you orientation. If you go up a little bit more to Tice Creek, and then you see a little yellow underneath that black, looks like the state of California, that is actually the fitness center, and then that's Comstock Drive below it. We've actually have used this in an emergency situation already where we opened it up when the gate got shut down. That was opened up to allow people to get out because the gate was closed down momentarily by the Walnut Creek Police Department. That road is easily traversed. It's all asphalt, and it leads onto the Manor Care property next door to us, and then right on out to Tice Valley Boulevard. There's also another one that isn't shown directly on top of what you would see this California, which is the fitness center, and that's the dog park. The dog park is also an access road where you can drive over the dog park and you can go out onto Ocklawahanee's school district property. And then you'll see on another one, moving over to the right of that, on Golden Rain Road, entry 6 and 7, there's another access road, and it's in good shape. And then that one goes down onto Tice Valley. It does traverse private property, Ocklawahanee's school district property. So those are the ones that we would have to set up an MOU in case of an emergency. So those are the things we're looking at on the roads. To let you know, I did go on a hike with Eric Cox off of the one on the bottom red one. And that one there is a dirt road. And Eric and some of his group and us were looking into who owns that property. It goes out to a fire gate, which is operated by the San Ramon Valley Fire Department. So we'll be talking with them a little bit more and looking into, is there any other ways that we might be able to eventually someday create as an evacuation road? So that's what we're looking at. Okay, what is Golden Rain, as far as what have GRF been doing about wildfire safety and preparedness? So I put together a little list to kind of talk about some things have been completed and some things are in process. First off, the wildfire presentations by experts to the community. So we've done 3 of those. We have the 4th one on September 1st, and CAL FIRE is going to be there. The reason I have CAL FIRE coming is there is a portion of Rossmoor that falls into the state response area. So that means CAL FIRE can respond to fires in that area without having any authorization or approval. So it allows for a quick response. Since a portion of Rossmoor falls into that, CAL FIRE actually will respond to any fires within Rossmoor, and they have. They've done it on many times. Even the most recent grass fire, they were on the route with a helicopter actually, but Con Fire waved them off and said they did not need them, that they had it under control, and they did. So they're coming in to talk about SRAs and local response areas and what they do differently than local and what they're planning to do as far as the whole state, what the plan is how they are fighting future fires and how they are managing or mitigating fires in the state of California. Created the Rossmoor Emergency Planning Group. So that group meets monthly, and it consists of the City of Walnut Creek Police Department, Con Fire, Office of Emergency Services of the Sheriff's Department, Animal Control, and I believe, and GRF. So we make up that emergency planning group. We meet every month. And then that's also the panel that is on every wildfire presentation. They are the experts in the group. So whenever a question comes up, they can answer it. And then also there's the vegetation mitigation, which exceeds Con Fire requirements. I know Rebecca will go over more of that. She's also done a lot with vegetation replacement over the past few years, and she'll go over that as well. Con Fire and Cal Fire partnerships, I kind of already talked about that, but those partnerships are a lot stronger. And thanks to my predecessor, Dennis, he's the one who started them, and I've carried him on. And now we're reaching out to Cal Fire to have a better partnership with them. The red flag warnings via Nixle have been going out, as well as we now have a red flag that will be posted up at the gate whenever we are under a red flag warning or watch. As we already talked about, the Ready, Set, Go and Know Your Zone cards that will go out annually. We still have some, like Tim talked about. We have them at the Gateway, we have them in the Public Safety Office, we have them at the MOD. So if you need them, and also the Rossmoor News has them as well. If you need one, you didn't get one, or you lost one, you can go to any of those places and receive another one. I'll be sending those out. My goal is to send those out every April. I'll update it every year, make corrections, and put on more stuff that is pertinent and current to wildfire safety. The Shady Glen and Sportsman Park, what have we been doing there? Because that has become an issue of barbecuing close to vegetation, especially during this fire season, which is just be one of the worst. We immediately put up hoses and fire extinguishers, and we also had vegetation work done to cut back the vegetation. We're also in the process, I did a presentation to our policy committee regarding shutting down the Shady Glen barbecue area during the fire season. There'll be more about that here coming up pretty soon. Participation in EPO and CERT, including some funding to help them out. We've done that this year. MOUs with property owners for emergency access. I've already talked to you about that. We've replaced all of the locks at the access points and roads, and the reason that was done is obviously those roads, we wanted brand new locks that were easy to operate, so those have been all replaced. The ones that were there were pretty old. And then wildfire cameras. A lot of people don't know about this, but we are going to be installing 2 wildfire cameras. We currently have one. It's up on it's up on the end of Stanley Dollar Drive where Lucas Drive is. We have one that covers pretty much almost all of Rossmoor, and then we're installing 2 others. One is over on Sakhalin Indian. That is to cover that canyon where the power lines go over. It's a dense canyon, and that's been identified as a high-risk area by the fire department. And then the other one is on Rossmoor Parkway in Terra Granada, and that one will be able to cover the south part of Rossmoor Valley, as well as be able to see Las Trampas wilderness area. We've also, and so those are the wildfire cameras. Hopefully they'll be coming, hopefully in the next few weeks. Thank you to Lafayette Police Department. They're the ones who are installing them and are helping us. And it's through a grant program. And if you ever want to know more about it, it's called Y-Fire. Great program. All right, questions?
That's great, Tom. May I ask a first question, please?
Sure.
Great. Can you give us any update, Tom, on air quality sensors that we might have here in Rossmoor?
Yeah, we do actually have them. Yeah, in both purple is there's one for purple that they use here, Purple Air, that's mounted here in Rossmoor. And I know there was even talk about some more actually being installed here because yeah, that is a big part as we see all these smoky days that we have. They're important to know what is the level of smoke in the air and what is an unhealthy level.
So Tom, I can update that further. So we have outdoor sensors at both outdoor swimming pools at Dollar and Hillside. Those are the Purple Air sensors. And then we have indoor sensors at Gateway, the Pro Shop, and at MOD. So There's a total of 5 GRF sensors, and I've looked on the map actually earlier this morning. I saw that a number of residents have purchased their own as well. So if you go onto the Purple Air website, put in our zip code, you will find all of the sensors, and they're updated, every few minutes. So you get a good reading as to what the air quality is like in this valley.
Good, Tim. Thank you. Christine, do you have any questions from our attendees for Tom?
I do. Tom, thanks for that great presentation. It's always good to hear about the great planning that you do. Excuse me. One of the first questions is, I read your article in the Rossmoor News, and it was great. It talked a lot about what residents are not doing to keep ourselves safe. But it mentioned that we have a new Securitas manager. When will we have a chance to meet him or her?
That's a really good question. Actually, you will see on Wednesdays, Rossmoor News is the introduction in the newspaper of him to the community. So you'll see him there, and then he'll be coming to the next EPO meeting. So he'll be on this, and then he'll be coming to the CERT meeting, and so he'll be. His name is Steve Bertolozzi. He is a retired lieutenant from Walnut Creek Police Department. I do know him, and I'm very excited he's here. We are going to get a new level of service that I'm excited that he'll bring Securitas up to even a better level. I think they're actually doing a great job right now, but I think he'll even take them to another level. And I'm really excited that he is here. And so the Steve Bertolozzi travel show is coming shortly to a neighborhood near you.
Good, good. In that article, you mentioned that so many of the current events in Rossmoor are because people leave their doors or cars unlocked and things in their golf carts. And those are crimes of opportunity, really. But you also mentioned that in some cases, it's people who are authorized to be here already. Is GRF or Securitas taking any action to make sure that those repeat offenders, in some cases, or if someone who is authorized, does something that they're no longer authorized, they're persona non grata, perhaps?
Yeah, we do. I monitor people that fall into that category that you just described. And I inform the different mutuals of any issues that we have as far as, if they've been arrested or they've stolen property, those kinds of things that we know about. I do inform the mutuals. We are limited though, and here's a little misnomer. Everybody thinks that Golden Ring Foundation, we can ban anybody we want because of bad behavior, and we just can't. We don't have the authority. There's no legal authority for us to do that. However, there is some things we can do, specifically with co-op mutuals. A co-op mutual has different restrictions on people who live there. And for example, in the article last week, you probably saw one where we did have an issue with an authorized person who was in here, and his grandmother lived in one of the mutuals that was a co-op. And I worked with the president of the co-op to have him banned. He was just not good for our community. He was a safety issue for our community. And kudos to the mutual. They were on the spot, set up a hearing, and that person has been banned now. So it is true that most people who are arrested for doing crimes in Rossmoor are authorized to be here. It's not someone sneaking through the gate, as some people might believe. That is not true. Although that does happen, it's a very small number of people that we arrest or that Walnut Creek police arrest for doing crime in here that have snuck in to Rossmoor. The vast majority are authorized people to be here.
So basically, if we know of people who are repeat offenders, we need to work through the mutual to get whoever is authorizing them to not authorize them any longer.
Correct. That's
okay.
correct.
Good. Yeah, I remember from my mutual days, we had to do that in some cases. It's not fun, but it needs to be done.
So if
and
I just add on,
all of us need to be aware if we've authorized someone that is causing problems, take care of business.
right. And we're looking at a new access control system. I'm pretty excited about the one we are looking at. It allows for, easier to update your list. It's a reminder. It restricts. It does a lot better job of managing who is allowed in here and verifying, is this a current list? And so I'm excited about that because I think that's one of the things we need to improve on is that, and that's coming soon.
Okay, we do have a couple other questions. Where can one get a copy of the map with the alternate routes? Is that available to residents?
Yeah, that is in our emergency operation plan as an appendix.
Okay, and I've had a couple people ask, what are SRAs?
State response area or state responsibility area.
Okay.
But really what that is it's what CAL FIRE uses. So it's a CAL FIRE to continue or add on to it. CAL FIRE state responsibility area, meaning it falls under their jurisdiction and their responsibility to respond to that area if there is ever a fire.
Okay. Are there any drones that could sort of survey the area and make sure that we're aware of anything that happens, either crimes or fires?
So the Walnut Creek Police Department actually started a drone program. I was actually part of starting that, and they're active now. And so both Walnut Creek and Lafayette have drones, and they use them. And they actually used them involving a catalytic theft that occurred in our community back in February. And they actually located the suspect vehicle as it was driving through Rossmoor, led to a pursuit, and then the capture of at least one of the suspects. But they ended up arresting the other one later on.
Good, good. Let's see. Are there plans for any wildfire wildfire cameras to, especially along the ridges? I've had a question for Rockledge 8, where we've had a number of squirrels causing fires, or Red Wing Court. Are there any plans for surveillance cameras to make sure that we're aware if a fire is roaring up the hills around us?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned before, we're going to be installing 2 more. And these cameras aren't stationary. These are PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom cameras. They're phenomenal. They're $5,000 each. The quality and clarity is so impressive. You can go on wi-fi.com, I believe it is, and you can look at the Lucas camera. The thing that's a little misleading is it's in a stationary point and you can't control it. Only the civil authorities are allowed to control it. And so I was able to see, I went to Lafayette PD and I got to see those cameras. There's also several private cameras throughout the county that you can't see, but civil authorities actually have access to them. And they were showing me the one up on Lucas Drive, and it oversees pretty much 90% of Rossmoor. It's mounted very high. We zoomed in on MOD, and you could almost see the license, make out the digits on a vehicle that was parked at the MOD. And its scanning ability is just incredible. So we'll have 2 more of those that cover areas or help that Lucas camera to cover the areas that are kind of like the blind spots, we call them. So those will be installed here shortly, and then that'll give us more coverage. And those would cover those other areas that you talk about.
Who will be monitoring those again?
So it's a multitude. It's Confire, San Ramon Valley Fire, Walnut Creek PD has access to them. Lafayette PD watches them. Office of Emergency Services, if you're at the last wildfire presentation and they talked about their emergency operations center, those cameras are fed right into there. So those are the people who are watching them. And then there's other people who have access. Even like the Water District can access them too. PG&E can access them as well. Just to help, evaluate their lines. PG&E is the one who actually pays for a lot of these cameras through a grant funding mechanism, which is then attached to several universities. And the whole idea is to get more and more of these cameras out there so that to make California safer.
Good, good. Couple more questions. Regarding drones, can those be used to find missing people?
Yeah, that's one of their roles, is actually to find missing people as well as criminals.
Good, good. And then, Tim, you mentioned some drills, but Tom, are any drills planned for, in particular, because you mentioned those alternate access routes, to make sure that they work? You walked one with Eric, you mentioned, but making sure that the gates and the access routes are clear and workable in case we need to use them.
Yeah, I've already done that. I've done all of them. I've been on all of them and made sure I was familiar with them, and then replaced all those locks. Right now, no, because there's steps that have to be taken. I mean, we do have to set up these MOUs to be able to essentially trespass on other people's property and things like that. So there isn't any plan to do any kind of drill or that. There's steps, right? First, we've got to get permission. And then, GRF is going to be doing our own analysis and make sure that we can safely use them. But really, we're not the ones who open them up. It's the Walnut Creek Police Department. So they would have to come in and actually do their analysis as well to make sure that when they would use them and stuff like that. I don't see a drill anytime soon with the public on that. I do see a drill, an evacuation drill of your manor is going to occur. That's falling under the responsibility of the city of Walnut Creek. And they are planning, they were originally planning, remember that group I talked about earlier? We were, as a group, planning to maybe do it in the fall. However, Confire brought up a good point, is based on the history of what's been going on in the fall in California, a lot of times they have to go to other places to fight fires, and that's just too taxing on them. So it looks like we've moved it to the springtime of next year will be our first actual live drill, with our residents. So that would be a better time. It's also right before fire season, so it's fresh in everybody's minds. Just be a better time. And then also it's not so taxing on our fire people.
Okay, and there's a question, what's an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding? But some of the other letters you've thrown about, can you post those anywhere for people? Because those of us who've worked in government understand MOUs, blah, 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 but a lot of us, it's alphabet soup.
Yeah, I know. And I got that cop talk still. It's still in me. I've only been retired for a short time, and it's going to take a while to beat that out of me. But you're absolutely right, and I apologize if I confused anybody with those acronyms.
No, that's fine. So those are the questions I have for Tom. I do have some questions about vaccines. I don't know if, Fran, you want me to take those now or later?
I have one more question for Tom, if I might. Tom, I've had many residents express their concern about the fact that we don't have sirens that might awake us at night if there's a fire. Is there any, does GRF, this is to both you and Tim, how would you answer that for the community's concern? Now people are encouraging sirens in each EMC, say.
I'm not aware of looking at any sirens. Maybe my predecessor did, and I'll kick this over to Tim. Tim probably would have more knowledge on that.
Actually, I don't. I've not had anybody ask me about that before. So maybe it's something we should explore. And I wonder whether the city of Walnut Creek already has sirens that would carry into this valley, whether it's just outside of Rossmoor or inside Rossmoor.
No, the city has no sirens in the city. There's no sirens used. And I know that there's sirens in the county, though, that are used over by the petroleum, factories, or I forgot their names. But I know they're used over there in the north part of our county. But none down here in the south part or the middle part.
Well, and the sirens would only work for a portion of our community because we have a lot of people with hearing loss. So
that's a good point.
I think in past EPO meetings, there's been a comment that if need be, they'll knock on people's doors to make sure that, or notify through Nixle or telephone. But for those with hearing loss, it's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, that's all that I have for Tom.
All right.
Tom, I want to thank you for a marvelous presentation. That was excellent. Good job.
Right.
And we know that you have to leave early, perhaps now. So thanks from both Rossmoor Area CERT and Rossmoor EPO. Thank you. We are delighted you are our new public safety manager.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Are you ready to perhaps take some questions that might be for you?
Okay. I do have a question for Rebecca, and then I have some questions for Tim as well.
Great.
Who wants to go first?
Can you hear me?
Is that Rebecca?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Would the host please allow me to turn my camera back on?
Harris.
All right. Who's asking for their camera back on?
Rebecca.
It's me, Rebecca.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I can go ahead and start answering questions while you're doing that.
There's not a
Okay.
lot of them, but one in particular is, where do we stand in reducing the types of plants that are not best for our drought environment, both in terms of GRF and the mutuals and with PG&E?
Every mutual is a little different. It all depends on how much money they have allocated to that purpose. And as Tom had mentioned before, it's part of our 5-year plan to reduce juniper in particular. We're also phasing out Monterey pine trees, and we are also phasing out any of a specific type of eucalyptus tree called Tasmanian blue gum. We only have a handful of them in the entire valley, so those are less of an issue. But of course, these projects are not completely free. So each mutual is in a different stage of removal. And I also want to warn people that according to the 5-year plan, and also so that we can get this done as quickly as possible and as simply as possible, in a lot of cases, we've removed junipers and haven't immediately replaced them. And that's only because we're trying to get to a place of safety first. And once everything is out, then we can take a look at what is left and figure out how to best approach it. Now, that's not to say we're leaving places unplanted where juniper has been removed, but we are going back in and taking a look after that's done, again, just so that we can continue moving. So, yeah.
Rebecca, I made you the host so you can turn your camera on.
Okay.
And then you can make me the host.
Yes. Welcome back.
There we go. Sorry about all that.
Yeah, the controls are not what they normally are.
But we're having fun.
It's been a bit of a challenge today.
Okay, and I've got, let's see, a question. Are there any expanded off-season plans for strategic fuels mitigation work, either mechanically or by fire, of the most vulnerable ridgelines around Rossmoor?
That's a very good question. So prescribed fire is something that we are interested in exploring, but will take a lot of planning. Will also take a lot of community outreach, but there is a lot of evidence to support that prescribed fire is one of the best ways to prevent fire, and around the ridge lines would be a perfect way to do that, because we want to prevent any fires from coming in. So we are exploring that. There are a couple of foresters that are out in the field now that are making a forest management plan for us, which may or may not include some work along the ridges and perhaps some prescribed burning. So we are working on that. But yes, the ridges are on our radar because, as people know, fire usually moves upwards. And so if we can keep those ridges clear, we'll have more of a buffer to keep fire from moving into Rossmoor or moving from Rossmoor out into the adjacent areas.
Okay, good. Well, that's all that I have for you.
Tim, if you're ready to take some questions, it would seem this might be a good time to do that.
Sure.
Good.
Well, as Fran mentioned earlier, Rossmoor and you and the staff really deserved that award. You were way ahead of the curve in terms of keeping our community safe from the first round of COVID. We're in the second round now, or maybe the third, I don't know. And there might be a fourth coming up. So we had a bunch of questions ahead of this meeting about vaccines, and I've tried to organize them in a logical manner because that's, I think, the best way to inform our community. And I know you've mentioned this at the GRF board meetings, and probably anywhere you're walking, you get accosted about vaccinating questions. But I just have a series of questions that I would like to ask, and then we've had some from the audience. But first, congratulations. You really kept us safe from that first round. Now we're all worried about the second round. And I've looked for zip code information on the Contra Costa Public Health dashboard, and it's not available to me. And Fran tells me it won't be available to me. But somehow you have a secret in with the county, and you can get zip code information, which tells us Rossmoor and the surrounding area. But based on that, what is the current number of people with COVID in terms of both residents of Rossmoor as well as GRF staff members?
So I don't have access to that information. So the number of people that have either been infected or, let's see. So the number of people infected in Rossmoor or our zip code, I don't have access to that. There is information publicly available of the number of people vaccinated in our zip code. And you can find that, you have to dig very, very deeply into the county website, but there is a link. And I found it through ABC7 News had a website a couple months ago that they put up, and there's a hyperlink on that website. And so I just keep refreshing it every day. And that takes you, drills you, actually not into county data, it takes you into state data. So the state is tracking the information by zip code. And if you're curious, I'm not sure I can find it quickly. Let me see here. I have it right here. I'll put it up, just 1 second.
Thank you, Tim. That's great.
Okay, can you see that? So this is from the ABC7 news site, abc7.com. This is our zip code, and I'm pointing to it. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. The Rossmoor zip code is 94595. So what it tells us that 86% have gotten at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine, and 82% have been fully vaccinated. Now that includes people who are younger than the age of 12. So, and right now, no one under the age of 12 is eligible for a vaccine. So if you look at the next paragraph, of the population over 12, 93% have gotten at least one dose, and about 89% have been fully vaccinated. So I think it's fair to say that Rossmoor is probably has a higher vaccination rate than 93%, because in the zip code of 94595, I think there's about 16,000 people in that zip code, and a little less than 10,000 of those are in Rossmoor. So that leaves us with about 6,000 to 7,000 outside of Rossmoor. And people outside of Rossmoor includes people under the age of 12, and the vaccination rate being obviously a lot lower. So, or not a lot lower, but lower. And I'm gonna close this link here so you can see the rest of the page. Here is Contra Costa County. I'm kind of circling it here. So here's San Ramon, Danville, Walnut Creek right smack in the middle, Concord, Martinez, and they're color-coded by the percent of vaccinations. And I can't, I'm sorry, let's see here if I can show that. There we go. So the color code in this box on the left shows you the vaccination percentage of based on full vaccination. And you can see that in Contra Costa County, we have the second best vaccination rate of any zip code in the county. There's this one over here in El Cerrito, and it will tell you that it says zip code does not have reliable data for the vaccination rate. And then there's another one over here out in Brentwood, same thing. It says it also doesn't have reliable information. So when I come back over here to Rossmoor, which is right here, scroll that up so you can see. So we're back to our area, which is the second best vaccination rate in the entire county, with the exception of San Ramon right here. One half of San Ramon has a slightly higher vaccination rate than we do. So that's it. So Rossmoor's in very good shape. So that's the extent. Oh, well, let me show you down here. If you go to this website and you click this link right here, California's Open Data Portal, that will take you to the actual data. And at first I wasn't sure whether ABC7 was updating this with any regularity, but I've been monitoring it now for a couple of months, and they do update it as soon as the state updates its data, which is through August 10th. Then ABC7's website, which is a better graphical representation. You have to actually go through and look at reams and reams of data on that portal site and have to sort it out, and then you have to divide it by 100 to get to, or multiply it by 100 to get the percentages. So here, ABC7 already did all the homework, the legwork on this for us. So that's my source of information.
That's marvelous.
Yeah.
I think in part that great vaccination rate is due to the clinics that were held here, except for Kaiser clients. But so kudos to that. So that's regarding the residents, but we all interact with staff as well, some more than others. And that's a question in terms of what is the vaccination rate for staff here, GRF staff?
It's at 83% as of Friday. So it's nearly the same number, and that's full vaccination, 83%. I don't have the data for partial vaccinations, which would be a little higher than that. So it basically mirrors the vaccination rate in Rossmoor, just a little bit lower than Rossmoor residents who actually live here. So it's very high. I saw in the newspaper this morning that the state of California's vaccination rate for all people is just over 50%. So Rossmoor and the Rossmoor employees are vaccinated at a rate much, much higher than the state averages and the national averages.
Okay, well, kudos for you for getting the staff vaccinated. For those who aren't vaccinated, are there any plans to make sure that they're tested regularly and frequently, since they do interact with the high-risk population that we all are here in Rossmoor? So
that's a good question, and it probably leads to some other questions. So I'm probably going to just answer a whole fell swoop of these with my response. So
okay.
So Golden Rain has been in touch with its attorney. The board has met and discussed this in executive session recently, just last month. So there's a variety of reasons why vaccinations have not been mandated, and I know that's a frequent question. I get that multiple times a day, every single day of the week. I've answered it in the paper 2 weeks ago, but the questions still keep coming, and people just understandably aren't willing to accept the answer. But let me tell you what the answer is. So the board, in consultation with their attorney, has decided that GRF is not in a position to mandate vaccines. Now, people keep citing to me and writing letters to the paper that, well, state of California is, city of Walnut Creek just decided to do it last week. Other public entities, city of San Francisco, city and county of San Francisco, noted that they had agreed to that about 2 weeks ago. So all of these entities are public entities. So governments, public institutions like public education, California State and UC universities are all public institutions, and by law, they are immune from liability. That's both federal and state law. So if an employee that works for them sues them because they were terminated for failing to get a vaccine, they are immune from liability. They cannot be sued. They can agree to be sued, but if they don't agree to be sued, a court will throw them out. That they have no standing under the law. Private employers like the Golden Rain Foundation are not immune from liability. So pretty much the only corporations you are seeing making announcements around mandatory vaccines are the largest corporations in the United States. Google, Microsoft, Facebook. You're talking about $1 to $2 trillion capitalized companies. These are very, very large, the very largest corporations in the United States, which all tend to be high tech these days. You aren't seeing much smaller organizations mandating that, unless you're a small restaurant or a small business that relies 100% on revenue coming from your customers. You might see a small restaurant mandating it because they've got nothing to lose. If they don't, they will not have any business. They will go out of business. But that's not us. We're not that. Golden Rain Foundation is providing both recreational services and critical maintenance services for this community. So with about 17% of the staff unvaccinated, we've looked at the departments that those staff members are in, and it's, we don't have a lot of large departments. Most of our departments are fairly small. Maintenance is a large department, but most of the departments are, 10 people or less. And if you have 1 or 2 people in your department not vaccinating, And if we were to mandate a vaccine and anybody failing to get a vaccine is terminated, you will have massive disruption here in Rossmoor. Virtually every department has one person in it that's not vaccinated. You will have the fitness center shut down. You'll have the golf operation shut down. You will have the maintenance operation mostly shut down. The Rossmoor News will shut down. So 17% is a lot, but it's fairly consistent with what the vaccination rates are here in Rossmoor for the general population here. So the board decided that, and I'll give you the reasons. The board decided not to mandate vaccines because the CDC, California Department of Public Health, and Contra Costa Health Services all continue to state that vaccinations are effective at preventing serious illness, hospitalization, and death. According to the CDC, a vaccinated person's chances of dying from the seasonal flu are 200 times greater than dying from COVID. So if you're vaccinated, the chance of dying from COVID is very, very remote. You have a much greater chance of dying from a lightning strike than you do dying from COVID. That is according to the CDC, that's on the CDC website. The vaccination rate, as I showed you on that screenshot, was at over the age of 12 in our zip code, it's 93% have at least one vaccine, and 89% in this zip code are fully vaccinated. The board also was considering that the vaccines currently are only being authorized under emergency use authorization from the FDA. They are not formally approved. So there is a question, there's a legal question, whether a private employer mandating a vaccine under an emergency use authorization, whether that would be legal or not. It certainly will be challenged if it has not already been challenged in court. Because Golden Reign is not a government and not a public entity, we are not immune from liability. Private employers are going to be subject to lawsuits for wrongful termination, and that is what an employee who gets terminated for failing to be vaccinated, that's what would happen. This is a constitutional right issue that will ultimately be settled by the Supreme Court. And so then the question is Golden Reign prepared to go all the way to the Supreme Court to fight this? And you're talking about approximately $2 million. So in order to take a case to the Supreme Court, you're going to spend about $2 million. Is that a good use of resident funds? The board was evaluating all of this in their consideration, evaluating the fact that the vaccines are very, very effective at preventing serious illness, hospitalization, and death, and decided that at this point that was not what we were going to do unless and until either the state or the federal government provides some cover for private employers, meaning some relief from liability. They have not yet done that. So that is why you're not seeing private employers separate from public entities like the City of Walnut Creek or City and County of San Francisco or UC or Cal State or any other institutes of private learning. There are exceptions. You'll see hospitals and long-term care providers who are mandating vaccines, and they're rolling the dice. They're private entities, but they believe their legal advisors are telling them that they think they're on fairly solid ground. But there are a lot of lawsuits currently right now in the courts for hospital workers who have been terminated for failing to vaccinate. And so it's not clear yet. They're private employers, but they are providing a a significant public service, public health care delivery that it's unclear. It is not clear until the Supreme Court rules on this whether the different types of entities are going to be exempt from liability for this. So bottom line is the board felt that it would not be a good use of resident funds, which could be up to about $2 million to defend taking a case to the Supreme Court. And so here we are. So let me tell you what we do. So all employees and all visitors, as was mandated by the state a couple weeks back, are all required to mask indoors. So that's to prevent the spread of the disease. If a staff member is exposed to or has symptoms of COVID, mandatory quarantine is required. PCR testing is required as soon as practicable. If the employee is vaccinated and the employee can return to work 72 hours after symptoms subside. If they're not vaccinated, they cannot return to work for at least 10 days after the symptoms have subsided. So the public health officials continue to tell us that the vaccines are effective and that they are the best defense against serious illness. If we've got 93% of residents over the age of 12 in our zip code vaccinated, the CDC, the California Department of Public Health, Contra Costa Health Services all say that the risk to vaccinated people is minimal. Now, that then means that for residents in our zip code, there's 7% who are not vaccinated. So that includes about 6,000 people in the zip code outside of Rossmoor that are in this zip. So we hope, as everybody hopes, is that anybody that's made the decision not to vaccinate, they've either done it for personal reasons, health reasons, or religious reasons, and that they are taking steps themselves to keep themselves safe. And that means, I would suggest that means that you should really limit your exposure to people outside of your home. If you're not vaccinated, you have to take these additional precautions. And you and I all know, everybody on this call knows that there are people who are not doing that. There are people who are saying it's their choice, it's their freedom to get out and do whatever they want to do, and that's the choice and decision that they've made, if it's not for health reasons or religious reasons, to remain unvaccinated. But I know that Fran would tell you as a public health professional that the vaccines are safe, they're effective, they will save lives, they are saving lives. So the next best thing to do is to do the things that have kept us safe for the last 17 months. That is to keep your distance, minimize your extended social interactions with other people, wear a mask, avoid public gatherings and public spaces, sanitize hands and surfaces frequently. That is what got us through the first, 14 months or so of this pandemic before the vaccines were made widely available. So that will continue to keep us. That's all we got to go with right now. We've got vaccines, which we didn't have prior to December. And now with this new surge, and Christine, I'd actually argue that it's the fourth surge that we've had since this has all begun. It's not the second. What's different today, as opposed to what was different, say, prior to December, was that we have a vaccine that we did not have available to us in the first 9 months of the crisis. So the vaccine, with more than 50% of Californians vaccinated, with more than 90% in our zip code receiving at least one shot, we are in very, very good shape. And I can tell you that, as you asked me at the outset, what the infection rate for our zip code is, I have not been able to find that data. The county has not been willing to provide that data to me. And I haven't been able to find it publicly available. But I have found the vaccination rate. That's the information that I shared, screen shared with you all, that shows that we're in very, very good shape. I can count, as far as I know, on one hand, the number of people who have died in Rossmoor from COVID.
Right.
I can count that on 3 fingers. So as horrible as that is, it's extraordinarily low. We should have had, if we mirror just the state rate of infections, we should have had well over 1,000 people infected in Rossmoor. We should have had hundreds of deaths if we mirror the state or the national level. We have had, to my knowledge, 3. And I feel horrible about that. It's upsetting. But I think that the steps that Golden Rain has taken, and most importantly, the steps that residents have taken to follow the guidance, to maintain social distance, to mask, to sanitize, all these things, they've all added up to Rossmoor being a very, very safe place. Now, that doesn't remove the concern or the anxiety that people have that go to the fitness center or go and play golf and they interact with a staff member who may or may not be vaccinated, or a colleague that you're going to exercise with or play golf with or tennis or anything else. You don't necessarily know whether they're vaccinated. Now we're all wearing masks, so prior to 2 weeks ago, if you weren't wearing a mask, that meant you were not vaccinated, if you were being honest.
Yeah.
And there were people who were not necessarily being honest and not wearing masks. But now by law, everyone is required to wear a mask if you're indoors. You're not required to wear a mask outdoors if you can maintain at least 6 feet of social distance. If you're going to be closer than 6 feet, you should be wearing a mask outdoors as well. So I think that if we continue to follow the things that have got us this far, and we continue to encourage anyone that we know that is not vaccinated to get vaccinated, I think we'll eventually get through this. It's extremely discouraging to learn about the Delta variant. Mm-hmm. It's extremely discouraging to know that there's 20 more letters in the Greek alphabet, right, that these variants are going to keep coming at us. Yes. As long as this virus can propagate, the variants will continue, and they will probably be some that are going to be immune to the vaccines at some point. Yes. That's how viruses work. They propagate themselves, and they find hosts. As long as they have a host, they can then work their black magic and do their damage. And if we can get everybody vaccinated, we will have a very good likelihood of getting our hands around this thing and it going away. What they tell us is that, what the CDC is saying is that at some point this will likely devolve into the seasonal flu. They even think that, they hypothesize that the seasonal flu we have today is probably a result of the 1918 virus. And so probably COVID-19 will eventually go that direction, we hope. But, and it's going to be, no worse than the seasonal flu. And right now, if you're vaccinated, you are 200 times, you have a 200 times greater chance of dying from seasonal flu than you will of the COVID-19 virus.
Tim, if I can just make a remark here, I want to praise you again for reminding our community of what we call best practices around COVID-19. All the things, the behaviors that you have itemized are the things we must continue to do until we make our way, out of this variant melee we're in. Thank you. That I just want to emphasize that to residents. The best practices, we have to continue to do that to keep our community safe, and people outside our community friends and family. Thank you.
Fran, I do have a couple other questions. Can I continue?
Yes, please do. Yes.
And Tom, it's you. Tim, it's you. Tim, Tom.
Okay, yep, sure.
Now, we've all seen incidences of breakthrough COVID cases that are unnoticed by the person carrying the virus. Excuse me. It seems like that would be a risk for folks, especially the unvaccinated. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. If you haven't gotten the jab, why not? I don't know any God that would tell one not to get one, in my opinion, but that's up to the people's pastors. But that would lead to a call for ongoing testing for GRF staff. I mean, we can't mandate testing for residents, unfortunately. If I were queen, we would. But you're the king of Rossmoor. Can you mandate testing for employees?
Well, you give me way more credit than I deserve. I'm not the king of Rossmoor. So GRF staff do not make policy. The board of directors makes policy. Staff execute the policy. So the board evaluated that question and decided at this time that they were not going to mandate testing. And I'll tell you, one of the things they talked about was we'd have to give about 2 to 3 hours off of work for every employee to be tested at whatever frequency, if it's weekly or every day or whatever. And so you're talking about paid time off, about 25% of a day, to allow somebody to go and get swabbed. And they're talking about, they have I've forgotten the names of the various tests. There's the PCR test, which I know is the deeper test, the more thorough and accurate test. And they have the home tests, which are more readily available. They're very inexpensive, but they have a very high false positivity rate. And I watched an interview over the weekend of the guy who invented one of those. I think he came out of Australia or somewhere, and so they were already doing a flu vaccine or a flu test that they've been experimenting with for several years. They were able to pivot quickly to a COVID-19 test, but he acknowledged, he says, look, I can't, there's no way, with this type of technology, there is going to be false positives. So then what do you do? So the board felt that, paying people to take 2 to 3 hours off each time they were tested was probably not an efficient use of resident funds either. So, and again, when you fall back and you follow the CDC, California Department of Public Health, Contra Costa Health Services, and the National Institute of Health, when you follow the science that they are putting out, they are saying that if you're vaccinated, even if you're asymptomatic, even if you have the infection and you don't realize you have it, you have no symptoms, that you are protected. It's going to keep you, well. And if you do show symptoms, they're going to generally be very mild. There have been, I don't have recent data. The last data I saw was about 2 weeks ago. In the United States, 2 weeks ago, 161 million people had been vaccinated. 849 people had died that were vaccinated. That's I don't have my calculator out, but that's something like 0.0005%, something like that. It's virtually nil. Your chance of dying, and there was no analysis of those 849 deaths to see whether there were other comorbidity situations or some other contributing factors. So the chance of getting sick enough to go to the hospital and then dying are so remote if you're vaccinated. So with a very high percentage of our staff vaccinated, with a very high percentage of the Rossmoor community vaccinated, again, the board just didn't feel that mandating testing. We had an employee resign a week ago last Friday because he just couldn't wear a mask any longer. He said, I just can't do it. I'm quitting. He's a 25-year employee who just quit because he couldn't wear a mask any longer. So if we were to mandate testing or we've already been told by a number of employees that if we mandated testing or we mandated vaccines, they also would quit. So that, if it would not surprise me that if the state or the federal government provide some cover for employers, it would not surprise me that the board decides to mandate vaccines. But at this point, the choice is, are we prepared to spend up to $2 million to defend ourselves in court? Could take a case all the way to the Supreme Court. And that is why, again, why you're not seeing a lot of smaller private employers doing that. Only the very largest corporations that have extremely wealthy corporations like Google and Facebook that can suffer through that type of a challenge, a legal challenge like that. But we can't. We don't have that kind of money.
A couple other questions. Would the board consider doing anything like the state has done or the lotteries have done? You give an employee $100 if they get vaccinated. Way cheaper than $2 million. But from what you're saying, I'm not sure that would move some of the resisting employees. But has the board considered something like that?
Not yet, but I saw just this morning on Contra Costa Health Services website that they are now offering $100 for referrals. So if you refer somebody who gets both shots, you as the referrer will get $100. Yeah, so recommend all your friends who aren't vaccinated. At this point, I don't see that, and nor at the state. They just saw very, very few people take advantage. I mean, they were giving away $1 million. The state was 7 of them. They gave away $7 million to get in the lottery for the vaccine. I don't think $100 is going to change anybody's mind at this point. I think the people who have decided not to be vaccinated in Rossmoor, whether they're staff or residents, are doing it for probably one of 3 reasons. It's religious, it is a health issue, or it's just their personal objection to their freedom of the government And the reason this is a constitutional issue is because the Constitution says that everybody in the country has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so the constitutional question is that or the common good. Which one will prevail in front of the Supreme Court? That's the question. Whether public health measures trump, and that's an interesting word, whether they trump life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And historically, the Supreme Court does not usually rule against that, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That usually is going to prevail. So that's why it's going to go to the Supreme Court. It's common good versus life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what they'll have to evaluate.
Okay, one last question for you. I was feeling okay about the number of unvaccinated, well, as okay as I could feel about being around unvaccinated people or staff at GRF. I mean, I can't box my neighbors' ears to make them get vaccinated, although most of them are. But are there any plans to isolate the few employees that are unvaccinated from dealing with residents or other staff members who could be placed at risk? We all just went through 15 months of Zoom exercises at the fitness center, dropping our payments off in the mailbox, not interacting with staff at all. So the tools are there. Can that be done for those who are not vaccinated? The GRF staff.
Yeah, that's
if
another...
I could control the residents, I would, but I can't. But you do have some leverage on staff in terms of isolating the unvaccinated from others or themselves.
Well, so I would say in most cases, so we continue to allow employees. So the law requires that employers accommodate people's health conditions. So if they indicate to us that the reason they are not being vaccinated is because they have a health condition, the law requires that we accommodate them. So we will continue to allow those employees, if their work is conducive to it, to work from home. But there are a number of positions where that just can't happen. Like, how do you do certain maintenance services? If you've got to unstuck somebody's toilet and you're not vaccinated, there's not a lot of options there. And again, if I terminate somebody or discipline somebody for not being vaccinated, that's what's going to get us into litigation. There's no question. We've already had employees tell us that they will do that. So to the extent that we can, we're accommodating those that have a health reason. Those that have a religious objection or a personal objection, there's not much I can do about that. Not much an employer can do about that for all the reasons I've already gone into. So, but there are some positions that we know there are unvaccinated employees that, because the employees have told residents this, we're not allowed to disclose those people. That violates, I know people say, well, you're not subject to HIPAA. Well, of course we are. The HIPAA law has been broadly expanded to interpret basically the protection of any health data for any reason. And not just health data, but other personally identifiable information. So, I don't have a great answer for you, Christine, on that question. It's we're doing what we can to minimize the interactions, but we know that, like at the fitness center, there are some employees who many residents have written to me and the board about, that they're concerned about, that the employees have indicated that they're not vaccinated. And so it gets down to your personal choice then. You don't have to go and be serviced by that staff member, or you don't have to go and visit that amenity if you know that there's an employee there who's not vaccinated. Don't put yourself in that position. Now, I know residents will say, well, I'm paying for that service. It's your job to make sure it's safe. Well, I come back to what the CDC, Department of Public Health, and Contra Costa Health Services tells us, which is that if you are vaccinated, you have a very, very remote, very minute chance of having any serious illness as a result of COVID. So I know it's a little bit like chasing your tail on this question. but that's, if, I know people will say, well, you're just going round and round circling it. And I am, because I don't have
Right.
the option here. The alternative is that you mandate vaccines. And the board is not prepared to do that at this point unless the state and federal government provide some exemption of liability for private employers.
Okay, one other challenge to all the lawyers who live here: get the legislature to protect GRF so that they can mandate vaccines. I know we've done that with solar. Come on, get to work if you know legislators, because there's no guarantee, Tim, I understand that. But given protection, there's a better likelihood that the board would consider mandating vaccines or testing. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I would like to think that it is. I mean, it makes perfectly logical sense, right? If the government, whether the state or federal governments, provide that exemption, I think you'll have tens of thousands of employers in California instantly mandate vaccines. I mean, it'll be, in 2 weeks you have to be vaccinated or show proof of vaccination, kind of a thing.
Right.
Which is what Google said, and Microsoft. They said on September 1, you must be vaccinated by that date and show proof of vaccination, or they're prepared to take, to defend the lawsuit. But again, you're talking about two of the largest and most profitable companies in the United States. They've got resources that they can defend themselves with. We don't have that. We don't, using your money, your coupon monies to pay for that, just at this point doesn't seem like a wise decision, especially when the vaccines are so effective. If they weren't effective or they weren't available, that might be a different conversation. But right now, the science is telling us, the public health officials are telling us, you're in very good shape if you're vaccinated. If you're concerned, just go back to the same things that we did before. Wearing the mask, sanitizing, minimizing your exposure to other people outside of your home, keeping away from public spaces, public places, large gatherings of people, and that sort of thing.
Okay, let's see. There was one, but it just flew out of my brain. So, and I didn't write it down. Oh, now I remember. It was written down. Someone has suggested, perhaps as part of the collective bargaining, I don't know when that comes up again, but requiring vaccines that are available of all employees. I don't know if that's on your radar or if that's something that it would be timely enough to deal with the Delta variant. But is that something that GRF could do?
So we are right now finalizing a new collective bargaining agreement. And if we were to throw something new at that, we would likely be accused of unfair labor charges. So, but even if we weren't at that stage, even if we weren't negotiating a contract for 6 more months, there's no way. There's not a union in the United States that would agree to that. So,
I don't know. The California Teachers Union has changed their mind. They were against mandatory vaccines, and I've heard they're now for them. So,
that would be news to me. I haven't heard that.
But again, it's public. It's not a private organization.
Yeah.
So, Fran, that's all that I have. Tim, thank you so much for being so thorough in your answers and forthright in terms of those answers. And just a call out to all you who know how to change legislation, get to work.
Thank you, Tim. That was a marvelous explanation of where things are in Rossmoor in terms of the COVID crisis that we're still in. And I think it reassures a lot of us, and we do deeply appreciate it. I've asked Harris Greenberg to go briefly through a set of slides. We are now at a place in our community and society with COVID where we're going to need QR codes likely on our phones to reflect our vaccine status. Here in my entry as a co-coordinator, I'm encouraging my neighbors to have both a actual copy of their vaccine card and get the QR code as well. The information that Harris is about to present is already listed on our website in a tip sheet. You can, you who are coordinators or local team members, take that tip sheet and print it out, make sure it gets to your neighbor residents so they know the steps to go through. So as complicated as it's going to seem as Harris walks through it, don't worry about taking notes. It's already up on our website under resident resources under COVID-19. So Harris, thank you.
Okay. So as Tim mentioned, HIPAA protection of personal information and healthcare data is very important. And at the same time, the potential for fake vaccination cards and ones that are pulled off of pictures of people on social media have made universities and other places and businesses nervous about being able to verify that you actually had a valid COVID vaccination. And so the state of California and other businesses have adopted what they call a smart healthcare card approach. And so this is what they look like over here, the little diagram on the right. You may be familiar with barcodes with just a bunch of vertical lines. A two-dimensional barcode is called a QR code, which stands for quick response, and it can be read from any direction and has backup. Even if it's printed poorly, it'll still work. And so there's two examples. The smart card can be a printed piece of paper, or it can be an image on a smart device. And again, you see the lines of text that is providing the health information directly there, but the QR code is doing something else. Basically, what the QR code is doing is it allows a separate app that a business or a restaurant, a hospital, an airline can safely and securely verify that your vaccine has been registered in the California Public Health Department, and when they use a special piece of software called the Smart Health Card Verifier app that will confirm that it's safe for you to enter their place of business because you've been vaccinated. They may also ask you to show some photo ID on top of that just to make sure. But how do you get that? A couple of very straightforward, simple steps once you know where to go. And again, this tip sheet is on the rossmoorepo.org website. You go to the California Department of Public Health vaccine portal, and it's listed right there, myvaccinerecord.cdph.ca.gov. And then there's very simple information to fill in. It's just your first name, your last name, date of birth. And now you had to go through all of this to register to get vaccinated. And at the time you were registering to get vaccinated, depending on what clinic was doing it, you needed to provide either a cell phone or an email address for them to get back to you and let you know about your appointment. So you need to provide that same cell phone or phone number or email address. And then you set a 4-digit PIN to access your record after they find it. Now, that 4-digit PIN is very important. You need to remember that. So you're probably going to want to write that down. The next step is after you submit that form online, they're going to search their records. And the thing is, because all of these different places were doing the vaccinating with pharmacies and on college campuses through the county, through Kaiser and other places, they all had different record keeping and different record submittal information. And So it may take a few days before they find your confirmation and the data that's in their system, and they'll get back to you with a link. When you a link will either be in the text message if you gave them a phone number, or in an email if you gave them your email. And when you click on that link, it now takes you to another web page where you just put in the 4-digit PIN. And after you put in the 4-digit PIN, it'll come back up and display that that QR code on the web page. What happens if they can't find the data in their system? This has been the case as people had a lot of problems signing up and getting their vaccine to begin with. And it's this, all of these steps actually happened to me. So I've been through this. When I first submitted my application, they couldn't find the data. And so when it came back, said, sorry, we couldn't find the data. Please click on this link and talk to our support staff. And so you get this chat.myturn.ca.gov, and there's actually a chat box there, and they ask you to fill in some more data. Typically this second pass now, they want to try and track it down a little bit better, so they're asking for the date of your vaccinations, the clinic name, a street location, the vaccine type, etc. And so you fill that in and then wait again for them to come back. If at that point they find it, fine, you go ahead and you'll get a link to put in your PIN and you'll see the code. If they still can't find it, they're going to send you back to the chat page and ask for more information. This time, you're probably going to have to give them an image of your vaccination card and a photo ID. And with that, that step pretty often works, and you're good to go. So now you've got a web page with that QR code on it, like you saw on the first screen. Now you want to bring it up quickly when you want to go into that restaurant, or you want to go into the sports stadium and they want to verify that you're vaccinated. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can take a screenshot of that image and save it in your photo roll. So now you just have to search for through your pictures to bring it up on the screen. You can also copy that image, paste it into a document, and print it. So now you've got the card, the hard copy card form of it, and that'll work too, because when the businesses scan the smart health card verifier app, they can read it from the printed copy or from the phone's photo app. Now, last resort is you can still pretty quickly bring this up by starting from scratch again. Go to the state website and follow the slide step where you put in your name, first name, last name, date of birth, the phone number, and your PIN. And that'll come up quickly because they've already found you and identified it. And at that point, as soon as you put in your PIN, your QR code comes up. So again, how do businesses scan that QR code? QR codes generally pop up in stores and on advertisements and stuff. And generally you can read a QR code with a photo app or even a standard QR code reader app that comes on your devices on your phone. And that generally takes to a web page, but it won't work with the the QR code that's used on the smart health card. The business has got to use that smart health card verifier app. And the way they get that app is for both for iOS and Android mobile devices. The commonsproject.org/smart health card verifier. And with that app, they can verify that you have a valid vaccination record with the state of California. and it's workable. And so that part of the exercise, as far as the business is concerned, you're good to go. They don't have to worry about whether you have a vaccination card that was forged or faked. And that's basically it. Again, all of this stuff is on the EPO website.
Thank you, Harris. It's a complicated process, but I think it's in COVID Jabberwocky world we are going to be in for some more time. This is going to be helpful information for residents. And I do encourage our coordinators and local team members to get with their neighbors and find out who might need help with this process of getting this information. This is going to be more and more necessary to get into any venues out in the world there. Thank you, Harris. And I want to thank all our leaders here, Tim O'Keefe, Rebecca Pollon, and Tom Cashion. He will hopefully see the rest of this program. I want to thank you very much for an incredibly productive and helpful meeting. And we hope this will be an annual event for our EPO members and for our community at large. Thank you very much and have a great day and stay safe.
Thanks, Fran. Bye.